I decided to just go all the way back to arguably the wisest human beings who ever existed. And I know this is a really brave thing to sort of put out there, that there is such thing as the wisest human beings. But I do believe that there is a case, that there is a group of people who are the wisest. The reason they are the wisest is because they've been around for the longest. The group who I spent a lot of time with, they're the Sun people who live in the Kalahari. The Sun people, now genetically, scientists broke down most of the populations around the world, and the Sun Bushman has the most ancient DNA from all human beings. Basically, that means that we are all, doesn't matter who you are, if you're African, if you're non-African, we are all the descendants of those ancient people who at one point lived in the area where today the Sun people live, and they stuck around there for about 200,000 years, and we left at one point, right? So we deviated away. They stuck around there, and not just that they stuck around, but they maintained to live exactly the way how we all used to live at one point. So they have 200,000 years plus experience of living in a particular way. Now, those people, what's interesting about that area, if you look at how environment changed throughout the history since we are around as Homo sapiens sapiens, anywhere a human being showed up, the natural environment was drastically changed. Large herbivores were usually wiped out, large carnivores were wiped out, and it doesn't matter what group that was. Even Native American Indians, who had a pretty good sense of nature, but even they killed off a bunch of different species. Now what's unique about the Sun Bushmen, that they did not do that. The reason they didn't do that because our evolution as the human beings, right, throughout those millions of years and the last 200,000 years as Homo sapiens sapiens, we evolved for a very particular area. So the environment and us, we evolved together. So it is useful for us to look at, okay, so if that's where we evolved and that's the environment we evolved together with, what kind of basic principles we can find in those people's lives? Because those basic principles allowed them to live a life that when they examine their happiness quota of these people, it's incredibly high. Even today, they're incredibly high. So when I got the chance to spend like a month over there living with them, and these are people who live really far away from everything. Even, in remote standards, this is as remote as it gets. And these people, so when I was there, they were so happy. And it was very mind-boggling to me that such a simple environment, because Kalahari is really not a place like, you go down to the Amazon jungle and you look around and you're like, wow, that's amazing, so many fruit, vegetables, everything is so cool, so accessible. You can picture how one could have a good life there. You go to the Kalahari and you look around, why here? It's like, really, there's nothing, at least, for someone who doesn't know much about the environment over there. You feel like, why would anyone choose this place to live, especially if you have nothing? This seems like the harshest environment. So that's why I figured, okay, so if we find the basic principles, what guides those people's lives, we might get an idea to what we could try to bring into our modern world, and they have this immense experience of 200,000 years. Just think about it. Any tools, any skills that we all have here, how young those skills are. Driving a car, 60 years old skill, right? Having a cell phone, 20-year-old skill to use it, right? Writing, let's say from Gutenberg, that's about 1500s, 1400s, right? So maybe 500-600-year-old skill. Now these people have 200,000 years of using pretty much unchanged skills. I could go into details, how they studied this, but the thing that they use is pretty fantastic. Now, why did they stick with it? People can say, well, they didn't really evolve. I don't know. If you examine these people, and there's studies about this, they work about 13 to 17 hours, let's say average 15 hours a week. They apply themselves to work, meaning, gathering food, hunting, and all those things. They have about another 13, 14 hours a week they spend taking care of their huts. If they have a broken strap of their little bag that they carry, they fix it. So domestic things they take care of for another 15 hours. So they basically work and do about 30 hours worth of things. Beside that 30 hours, they rest, they spend immense amount of time with their loved ones. They are notorious about being unbelievable parents. They really spend immense amount of time to educate their kids differently than the way we know education. But it's they are so close to their kids that they're within arm length about 90% of the time. The men, women as well, but the men as well. So they focus on who they love a lot. They love what they do. Now these people, keep that in mind, that we think, well, they're really just people living in the wilderness. Now, when it comes to they examine their knowledge, they know more than a Harvard professor of botany. They know more about nature than a Harvard professor. They are better at tracking than the absolute best Navy SEAL. And from the special forces, they have specialists who specialize tracking. They go to these people to learn how to do it. So these people are not just, some Joe who hanging out there and, no, they're really good at many things. So they're very good at things. They love their family. They don't work hardly at all. And they manage actually to have an incredibly high quality of life. Because when you think about quality of life, and probably you guys threw that out there for yourself, what is quality of life, right? I've seen a lot of different people, very poor people, incredibly wealthy people. And I looked at that, and wealth, as you guys probably read about it too, has this diddly squat to do with quality of experience, right? So these people develop this amazing quality of experience. So when, during the last 100 years, when these people were contacted, they were not contacted just only for the past 100 years. There was a lot of change in their lives because the environment where they live, it's really not desired by modern society. You can't really grow diddly squat over there. Kalahari Desert, nothing really grows. So they're still somewhat untouched, but the modern world does affect them. They use them as slaves during this past 100 years, plenty of time. And slave owners love them because they never stole. They never stole, so they were great, workers in the sense of there was no trouble with them, right? Oftentimes they just, decided to pack up and leave, but that was the biggest problem they had. So they didn't steal anything. They weren't really violent, towards any of the other groups. So why is that? Now, there's three components that I sort of was able to pick out with the help of studies and my own personal experience as well that really interesting. First, if you individually would have a fridge that never empties, like you would have a fridge that never empties, it's always filled with food, all kinds of food that you love, right? Doesn't matter if it rains, if it's dry, doesn't matter what, you would have this fridge. How differently you would live your life. Just think about it for a second. There's a lot of things that you would be like, work, I have my fridge, I don't care. I'm not gonna work for 2 weeks, I'm just gonna eat my fridge, hang out, do what I like, right? So it frees you up. Now these people are so amazing at what they do that they know where to find, what to find, when to find, and they have zero doubts about their capabilities, that they can find the stuff in nature what they need tomorrow. So when you have that security about your own skill, you don't really worry about many things because I know what to do. I can walk 10 feet and I can figure out something that I can consume. Or if I have a little bit more time, I go 2 hours. If I have more time, I can run down an animal in 9-10 hours, So they have such a skill that they just feel incredibly secure about their capability. So I was able to relate to this because when I was much younger, I was very strong. I'm not that strong anymore, but I used to be very strong. And then I was always thinking, when I came over from Europe over here, okay, if things don't work out, I'm very strong. I can always go to a construction company and I can just lift up shit, So, and I know I could lift more, shovel more than any other person who was probably around. And because of that, I was really free. I knew that I have certain skills no one can take away from me, and that will secure my base existence. And it always lifted me up. Whenever things were tough, I always thought about that. Worst case scenario, I go to construction, lift some stuff, and that's it. Luckily, I never had to do that because I know there's a lot to construction work as well. Now I know. Back then I didn't. I thought I could do everything on a construction site. Of course I couldn't. But it gave me a sense of ownership of my own self. I really believed in myself, and I had no doubts. Right? So that's one thing that's very interesting about that group of people. Another thing is they are notorious that they don't want to have anything. Nothing. Even if you give them stuff, they don't want it. You know, they like their bow, their arrows. They only have a few. They don't have many. A few arrows. They have a little tiny bag. They have a digging stick. Then they have, yeah, that's pretty much it. And they have a little nut shell that they put water in sometimes, not always, but sometimes. And these things they carry with themselves. Their huts are very simple as well. This is all they want. Because as soon as you have more, you start to worry about what if someone takes it, right? You start to be possessive. If someone else has more, it develops bad energy. If you live together with others and you all have pretty much the same thing, it's pretty easy not to worry about your stuff because, you know, he has it, I have it, she has one, you know, whatever. So they're very carefree, and that's somehow it's embedded themselves into their social, you know, belief that owning more stuff is not gonna make you happier. It just complicates stuff, and we don't need complication. We have our never-ending fridge, right? I have my loved ones. I grew into this. I love my grandparents, my uncles, my sisters, my cousins, my everyone, right? I can be with them. I love doing what I do. I love nature. They love nature immensely. It's not like, you know, many of you guys might be able to relate to this idea. We dread Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and we can't wait for Saturday, Sunday, right? It's sort of hammered into our heads during school years, right? Now, how crazy is that, right? That you're, you know, out of 7 days, 5 of them you're like, okay, I'll go. Yeah, let's do the best I can. Now, you should really be excited about every single day because that's your life, right? And if you don't feel that way, then you're focused in the wrong place, you know? And I'm saying wrong place, not necessarily wrong. We all were born into a society that is complicated. It's really complicated. We don't have an educational system that helps us find our way. You know, we are taught about math, English, about history, all of that's shenanigans, which is lovely. But no one teaches us how to deal with taking good care of yourself, right? No one teaches us how to deal with a relationship when it goes down. No one teaches us how to deal with strangers, right? Strangers, I talked about this in the past, is a very odd thing for a human being. We're not meant to meet strangers. You know, you're born into a place and you spend 99.999% of your life with the same group of people. So when things don't work out, you gotta figure it out because you're gonna see them for the rest of your life. So it's not optional. If you don't like someone or something happened that is conflicting with, you know, create some sort of conflict in you, you gotta deal with it because otherwise you're gonna see them every day, oh, I hate him. Who can do this? You know, they can't. So we are equipped within ourselves and also within a normal, healthy human tribe with tools that we can use when we don't understand something. We can turn towards this wise person, the elders, or we can, you know, look towards other directions, but everything is built into their society. So they're very carefree because everything is there, what we meant to have and what we're all evolved for. But as soon as we left that region, we never really found a way to exist in any environment where we didn't destroy the environment and created a very confusing lives for ourselves as individuals. Because what's good for a society, for a big group, is not necessarily the best for the individual as well. So at one point, it gotta change, right? And maybe that is the next thing that's gonna happen in our evolution as a society, as a civilization, that maybe people will start to realize that whatever is good for society is not necessarily the best for me. And how do I go about figuring out what's best for me?